Okay, I understand, I know it's one message goes to the next. Hopefully it's been signed by the board. Yeah, no, it's fine. But I know it's more meetings. I've been there Yeah, that's the.
I am working.
I know the people and everything ready to go. So once we have them, they'll be ready for selection. So. It's be just when I have all the sign off. That's what yeah.
This one.
Right. Yeah, I don't.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Share. We don't send out something. I mean, I read it. No,
Do you have an agenda other than this? No. You wrote it?
Yeah, I know.
I am going to move the 7th line down.
No, I never want to
That's actually, this thing's taxed.
Yeah, yeah.
Ready to get started? Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Call this meeting to order. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the September 17th, 2018.
I move to approve the minutes from September 17th.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any comments from the audience on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Next is approval of minutes of September 18th, 2018. Spring Co-Ed tour meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from September 18th, 2018, Great Co-Ed Park tours as submitted.
I'll second this.
Any comments from the audience on that one? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, Director, you're up with manager's report.
Okay, thank you very much. Over the past month, the comprehensive plan for the township, really for the Phoenixville region, but the township, this is our plan, for strategic planning for the township and the region as a whole. The Planning Commission had the opportunity to have Ed Zerkoff provide an update on that plan. There are draft implementation strategies now that have been developed, and they're available for public review. There will be another workshop after all of their outreach they've done thus far is completed, and that'll be in March of 2019. I wanted to report, I was recently appointed to the Chester County Tax Collection Management Committee. The board meets on a quarterly basis to review issues related to Act 32 of 2008, which requires these groups to get together. It's a government entity that oversees the collection of earned income tax, local service tax, and other taxes for local governments and school districts. I also recently attended a PennDOT meeting along with West and East Pikeland Townships to discuss a planned replacement of state-owned bridges in our region, and particularly for West Vincent. PennDOT is planning to replace the Birch Run Bridge below the intersection of Flowing Springs Road and Birch Run Road in 2021. So we have some time. They wanted some input initially up front from the township and some different needs. This is just a process that is getting started. It is in preliminary design. There are no design specifications actually created yet for this bridge. There are quite a number of things to cross off the checklist for environmental review. So that process has started. The 78th annual Chester County Day House Tour will take place this Saturday, October 6th. That's from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. I hear the tour is well attended, and you have to have tickets through the organization that runs this event, and I'll provide that information here. I thought it was interesting to just point out there's 16 homes and 6 public landmarks in the northeast quadrant of Chester County that'll be presented on Saturday. The event will kick off in West Vincent Township with the Kimberton Hunt in Bertramville, followed by a house tour of Charlie Dickinson's restored farmhouse at 937 Fellowship Road, which I thought was an interesting part of that. More information can be obtained through Kate Perlini, I think I said that right, 610-431-5301. If you have any interest, just let me know. They're doing a lot of planning to make sure that's successful. The Parks and Recreation Commission is holding a fall festival at Edmonds Park on Saturday, October 27th. That'll be from 2 to 5 p.m. with a rain date of Sunday, October 28th. Family-friendly fall activities, including a scarecrow contest, car pumpkin contest, costume parades for pets and people alike, and a community canvas painting among some other activities will take place here at the township. Election Day will take place on Tuesday, November 6th here at the Township Building, and as such, the offices are closed on that date. Department reports, we have 25 permit applications processed. We are working through our treasurer's report for the month of September to be issued later this month, and the 2019 budget is in progress. In the road department, the crew completed lots of maintenance to township roads and vehicles. Specifically, the road crew serviced PA one-call requests, replaced street signs, moved right-of-ways, dug out various pipes and cleared inlets, repainted crosswalks in St. Andrews Lane serving the St. Andrews Church, removed fallen trees on Cedar Mill and Beaver Hill Road. They also added stone, graded, and rolled Janie Lane and Birch Run Road, filling the holes in on Cedar Mill, Kimberton, French Creek, and Art School roads, and grading Bertolet and Green Lane. The township paving projects in Schoolhouse Lane and Flint Road are progressing, and that should be done by the end of this week. The culvert work on French Creek Road is expected to begin October 15th. The contractor is a little behind with materials. The weather is not cooperating for a lot of contractors, but they are set to do that week. So with that, that's my report.
What was that last project? What road?
French Creek culvert.
Is that in our township road still?
Yeah.
It only takes, what, 3.5 years to get a
I know,
bridge up?
I know.
Yes.
There's one.
I gotta tell you.
I'm gonna get you better
At the
hearing aids.
Phoenixville Regional Meeting, you said everybody should come up to this podium.
I said that on behalf of a woman who was way in the back of the room with the little voice.
So you didn't mean
when I meant it there, it was a much bigger room. Then you could hear me, we were at the same table, right? Yeah, okay. I'll work on that. My point is, there's one other excitement and traffic hazard on Saturday. The Mainline Animal Rescue is having their big bicycle fondo, and it has a rest stop at Schoolhouse Park. And so I think that's something else that we, and anybody who uses the roads around Bertrandville, go to the mail on Friday or when the cafe is open Saturday night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments from the audience on the manager's report? Brian? And Suzanne, you're next?
Yeah.
Did you have your hand up?
I did.
Come on up with me.
I will.
This is a question directed to Erica. You mentioned that PennDOT has nothing done for the bridges yet.
Correct.
But if I remember right, I remember reading that PennDOT does have a program where when they replace a bridge, they enlarge it to a goodly amount from my observations. So they don't have any standards, but we are looking at having the bridge end up being wider than, I take it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Suzanne?
Do I need?
Do I need to state my name and address? Suzanne Roth, 1360 Schoolhouse Lane. Oh, well.
Certainly know how to make it end.
Sorry, guys. My question is that this is the first time hearing that Mainline Animal Rescue is having an event, and that they're going to have a rest stop at Schoolhouse Park. Did they actually ask the township to do this, or did they just assume that they could? Because with Chester County Day, it's going to be a
It'll be
pain in the,
busy.
you know what is.
Yes, yes, they did consult with the township months ago about it. And the chief of police here, Mike Swittinger, had reached out and just wanted to understand the coordination of all his activities, rightly so, and they have a plan. So,
I hope so.
yes, me too, thank you.
Any other questions for Erica? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Erica. Next, we're on the list is to approve the bills list. Tonight's bills list is $169,115.62. The reimbursable bills list is $106,595.67. Combined are $275,711.29.
I move to approve the bills list dated October 1st, 2018, total amount $275,711.29.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments from the audience?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Under Amber Rubin, let's say it's for...
Speaking to the mic, please.
It's for 9/7, Amber Rubin, which is our legal. And we're still incurring bills for the sale of the sewer. Why is that?
Let's see here. We have, that is probably under for Pulte and Courts of Chester Springs. As part of the sewer sale, it was a post-closing agreement contingency, and we are getting very close to having that plant dedicated to Bucks County. I'm almost certain that's what it's associated with that, and that was included in the sale price.
Okay. Any other comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next, we've received a request from the O.J. Roberts School District Facilities Planning Steering Committee for a representative from the township. They meet 3 to 4 times apparently, and go over planning for the next 5 or 10 years. I asked you earlier, but do you have a gut feeling that they're looking for a supervisor?
Excuse me, I know they wanted to reach out officially to the Board of Supervisors for a representative, and it's not limited to the board. The designees, though, are told they really want to have people commit to attending all the sessions to make it important as far as stakeholder input.
First off, let me ask anybody in the audience interested? Then Mike Snyder, you have it.
Asshole.
Thank you. There's children out in the audience. That's what happens when you show up last. Next, we have a letter from the film crew. Is this from a concert?
This is actually, just to give a little background, this is something that Pico had contacted the township and wanted to do a promotional series of videos. And this will be part of a commercial series they're going to do on upgrades within all area townships. And they wanted to do something in West Vincent. So they asked the police department for some assistance with that, and it was along Horseshoe Trail. So they've done a lot of work with, coordinating upgrades over utilities and that sort of thing. So they wanted to use West Vincent as a backdrop. And this is a thank you for their assistance.
Thank you. Make sure Mike hears it.
Yeah.
There's seats up here if you're... Next is the request for an extension for the Weatherstone Commercial Plan 2, or Plan Phase 2.
I move to approve the extension request for Weatherstone Commercial Plan Phase 2.
I'll second the motion.
Eric, there's nothing special going on here?
No, but just to report, the planning commission reviewed the plan with Neil Fisher with September, the last meeting in September, and they received a unanimous vote for recommendation of approval for the board, so they will be coming to the meeting on the 15th for that. But they do need a little additional time.
Very good. So we do not have to do anything with this, we just accept it, we move on.
You do need to vote on the time extension.
Do you need
I
a
think
vote?
you already, yeah.
Any comments from the audience? And okay, you made the motion? Okay. And all those in favor?
Aye.
We have a second request. Mike, you want to read this one?
I move to approve the extension request for 1830 St. Matthews Road, Maxwell subdivision.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, this one, same thing.
Yes, straightforward, they just need more time.
Any comments from the audience?
I can't hear you unless you speak into the mic.
I apologize. Don't let me get away with that.
The lady is the only one I can hear.
Mike is?
No.
Oh.
Okay. Do you want to read the motion?
We already did.
The second one? You're not.
The Maxwell subdivision.
Okay. She threw me off.
Okay. But did we vote on Maxwell?
All those in favor?
Aye.
My book is a little screwy here. Next, we have the request for the Open Space Advisory Committee for the appraisal of the Glen and Bridget Hill property on Hollow Road. This is actually an item that came over from the previous meeting. Gentlemen, before we ask for a vote on this, I would like to delay this another 2 weeks to the next meeting, and the reason is, at our last meeting, we got a package. We got a package that had a listing of all the evaluations of the top 10 or 12 properties, plus the evaluation sheets. Something is changing over the weekend. I got a whole new set with a different set of evaluations. In some cases, some are on hold, and I don't know what that means. And what was the other thing, Erica? There's a different shakeup, or there's a different order of
The rankings were updated.
the rankings. So what I proposed, and I think I mentioned it last week, or last meeting, is to get together with a hands-on meeting with the Open Space Committee and the supervisors, and have a meeting, go down through the list and talk about it, get on the same page.
And that's fine with me. And that meeting's got to be
Get a
advertised.
microphone.
But why does that matter in regards to the Hill property? What we're gonna do is approve $2,500 for the
Yeah, but
appraisal.
why would we approve spending $2,500 if it's not a property that we're going to?
Well, it's a high-value property.
What's that?
It's a high-value property.
Well, it's not, it's number 4.
It's number 4, that's
Well,
not
why
right.
would we be going after number 1, 2, or 3?
Because this is the first and easiest one that's come in front of us now.
Yeah, but we have
The other-
limited
the other
limited
three-
money.
Limited money.
We have limited open space funds.
we're talking about $2,500. How much is in there?
No. It's not 2,500, it's 25 to get the appraisal.
We're
We're talking
on-
about to about 300 to 350 to purchase the TDRs. That's what we're looking at. We're not looking at $2,500.
We're spending the $2,500 to see if, in fact, the TDRs that have been said to exist
Right.
really do exist. We don't know if it's 8, 9, 10, or 13 as
No, I thought the
proposed.
TDR worksheet did that.
Maybe-
I thought the appraisal
We-
just values it.
We do have a TDR worksheet, but you want an appraisal. And as the landowner said last week, he's trying to do financial planning. He would like to know what value the township puts on those TDRs as part of his plan. He also said 2 weeks ago that they are not anxious to get paid immediately. They would accept payment over time. And so, but I really came up here to answer a different question, but I'll wait.
So,
So the other three before them, they're not ready to move right now. He's ready to move. So why not? I mean, we're talking about $2,500.
okay, well, I mean, and there's a risk here.
Why don't
We have 500 and some $1,000 at the end of December for open space funds. If we spend 300 or 350, whatever the appraisal comes out to, if the TDRs of number 13 TDRs are correct, then we're going to be left with a couple $100,000. We can't do any of the other ones if they come up.
Just because we're doing the appraisal, it has nothing to do with spending the $350,000.
Except that you want to spend $2,500 if you weren't planning on proceeding on the purchase. If you know you're not going to do the purchase, then you would never spend $2,500. It just wouldn't make sense. You would spend $2,500 for one of the other ones that you're proceeding with.
You might
If you don't
want
know
that,
you're going to proceed.
you might want that data to help you decide if you want to make that purchase.
If you're saying that the appraisal will change the number of TDRs and not the amount, well, then I would have some movement on spending the $2,500, but I don't believe that's actually true.
It
It'll
may-
just value the TDRs at
Jimmy?
$23,000, $27,000, or $25,000.
Mike,
right there.
it could possibly, is it this one? I'll shout. John can hear me, everybody can hear me. Thank you. Let's see if it still works. Hello? Okay. Depending on the valuation, the landowner may say, rather than selling 6, I'm going to sell 5.
Okay, so
Because-
you are in agreement that the appraisal will value each individual TDR. It won't change the number of TDRs. Most likely will not change the number of TDRs.
Most likely nothing
Okay.
is certain in this day and age, Mike.
Okay.
And one
And
of the
would you
things
also
I
agree
think
that
you're
the-
missing,
Okay, would you also agree that the TDR probably won't come under $20,000 of TDR and probably won't go above $30,000?
I don't know.
Based on past history.
As you know, I was just appointed to this committee in May, so no actions like that have been taken since I've been on the committee. So I don't know what the cost might be, but I think Mr. and Mrs. Hill have been working on this for 4 years. It is not unusual to have a TDR purchase drag on for months and weeks, years. And maybe Pam can speak to that about other land conservation projects. They don't happen that somebody walks in the door and you whip out your checkbook. What happens is it comes in, they talk to the committee goes out and does a tour of the land. We do evaluation. There's a long process, and it's a process involved with the landowners too.
And this has all been done, their dates are here when they had the site visit.
Right.
And, you know, it's also one of the notes, everybody here on the list is interested to sell their TDRs. So my question
Right.
becomes, at number 4, why are you going after number 4 instead of 3, 2, or 1?
Let's change that number 4 should say anxious, rather
Can I get a
than
word-
interested.
Can I get a word in that twice?
It's up to Mike.
Bernie, here's why first off, I don't think waiting 2 weeks is a big deal. I disagree with you spending $2,500 of anybody's money unless it has an immediate result or we need it. I don't know how you can say that would be a waste of, or would not be a waste of time. Here's what I base it on. The number 1 ranked part under the new list that I got over the weekend is that I think it's the Douglas property with 52 TDRs. Trust me, folks, the TDR value, the high side, I believe, 15 years ago was $25,500. per TDR. The lowest I've seen was approximately 23,000 and some change, I think 23,200 or something. Anyway, so if you use 25,000 as a ballpark for this exercise, I think you'd be close enough for the Hills or anybody else for estate planning. Anyway, the number one property for us to buy their TDRs would be $1.3 million. So why would we, this second property has 20 TDRs, so that would cost us $500,000. The third property has 3 TDR, or 10 TDRs, and that would cost us $250,000, and the Hills property is fourth. So why not wait 2 weeks so we can sit down and talk with the Open Space Committee, have an intelligent conversation? We tried this several months ago, and we never met. I don't know why.
You did meet.
Sarah, calm down, young lady, calm down.
Thank
But
you.
we
We
did
did, no, we
meet, but
did
not
not
in,
meet.
not in a workshop session and actually go
Go
over
through
it.
this.
That's true.
So that's why I think we should do that, and the sooner the better. And then we'll, ready to go.
2 weeks?
Well, how long do we have to advertise that, correct, Erica? Can we do it 2 weeks, Andrew?
I will reach out to
Okay.
Jody and the rest of the committee.
Before your meeting on the 15th? Or are you,
We'll be ready to, before the next meeting, we want to have an open space. Okay.
that's going to be a busy meeting. I came up here to provide some information about the difference from the old worksheets that you got in advance of the last Open Space Advisory Committee meeting and the new ones that came as a result of that. You asked us to polish up the list and bring you the list and the map. And so we had a workshop last week and a special meeting. I think Brian was there. And then we had our regular meeting last Tuesday, and what you got most recently was the results of that meeting. So what you had before was several years old and had not been updated.
Thank you. Right.
First, I was not at the workshop.
Oh, sorry.
But my question is, it would seem to me that an appraisal has a use-by date. And here's why. If you had an appraisal of real estate done in 2007, and then you never had it complete till 2009, 2010, after everything fell into shambles, there'd be a big change. So doing it right now for something that we may be spending in 2 or 3 years, it seems kind of odd to me.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Did you have something to add?
I see Bridget out there. I just wondered if you wanted to ask the Hills.
Anybody else? Okay, so we don't have to take action on that, but definitely put it on the next.
Okay.
And set up the workshop.
Erica, you're up with the award to snow and ice and removal bid.
Yes, thank you. The township put the snow and ice removal bid out for a second time. We received one bid. That bid did not meet our requirements, therefore, we are recommending to reject those bids. We, at this point, through the second-class township code, can contract directly with a provider, should that provider be willing to provide those supplemental services.
I move to reject the 2018-19 snow ice removal bid.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any comments from the audience? Did you understand what Erica was trying to tell you? What are we gonna do, Erica, if it snows tomorrow?
Yeah. Well, I think I have an interested provider.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Next, we have the discussion on the sewer sale proceeds discussion. Ernie, Mike, who would like to go first?
I'll go first here. What I have done since I've seen these monies become available is reach out to as many people as possible, both advisors and people who are active in the township, to get their opinions. I never like to make any type of decision in a vacuum, so I figure that with all these, as Jim had so eloquently stated last meeting, it's all about the residents of the township, not us. So I have reached out and took notice of where things were going. And the vast majority of people who responded said that they would like to see open space purchased with the funds. Now, I know that that is not going to fly. There are certain urgencies in the township that need to be attended to. So to say that all 5.7 million should go to open space is a little much. Realizing that we do need to upgrade this township building is something we have spoken about in the past. And that seems to rise to the top. And it would be one of the lesser expenditures out there. Next is trying to leave open space money for open space. If we're in need of tearing down the buildings, perhaps we should think about taking the $650 from this pot rather than from open space money, and leave open space money for land, for open space. Beyond that, I know that there are certain roads, Janie Lane, which rises to the top, that needs some urgent maintenance. Now, the advisors that I spoke to suggested that when you take money from sale of land, it really should go back to the sale of land. So it's real money for real money, and not to be put into an operating account, because that money will just get piddled away.
Let me ask you, I've heard repeatedly the word advisor. Who's your advisor?
Several, I'm not going to.
Come on, then
Some from the township, some are legal.
If you
Some
can't
planners.
share the name, it's.
Well, I'm not gonna share.
Okay.
Because some are from the township, some are legal,
It's.
some are engineering, some are planning. In any event, so with those thoughts in mind, I would like to see whatever we need for Janie Lane. I think it's 1.5 go towards coming out of this money.
How about Buttonwood Bridge?
Buttonwood Bridge doesn't seem to rise to the top as far as urgency.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so.
Come on, that's, doesn't fit.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't count that into the mix. I mean, with 1.5 going towards Janie Lane, I mean, that's a big chunk of that money.
It is.
So,
Okay, I approach it from a different view, I guess. Right now, we have $403,000 in our road improvement balance. We've got a 5-year road improvement projects valued at $5.3 million. So, just in the next 5 years, we're going to be spending over $5 million on the projects we have identified, not the $10 million for the 10 years. I believe that the proceeds from the sewer fund should go into two different places. $5 million into the road program to cover the 5-year plan, $800,000 go into a capital fund for things like additions or whatever we have to do in this building or our complex. And that complex study that we had done, I think, wasn't it somewhere around $6 million?
Potentially to do the
Entire
entire
complex.
complex over.
Big numbers. I don't think hopefully we'll never have to do that. But I think we should start creating that capital fund for those type of projects. And the road, the townships were created in the beginning for the roads and bridges of this state. And I think we should stay focused on that. The open space is funded by a separate tax, has its own funding, and I don't believe we should be taking taxpayers' money from another bucket and throwing it into the open space.
but didn't
Projects.
we take land that was open space and sell that land?
No.
The sewers weren't one.
No, that was a infrastructure, and we're gonna put the money back into our infrastructure, our main infrastructure, which is the roads. Roads are a main infrastructure to the township. The sewer was also a main infrastructure, but we did sell it, and I think that money should go into our roads. We're gonna have to get the money somehow, so if we take the money from
My point is, the
the
sewer system sat on land, and that land now is essentially gone for our use.
No, it isn't. I mean, it was never our use anyway, except for the sewer. It was that, I mean, it had a particular purpose, and that was the sewer.
And we did get some easements on it.
Yeah, just
that property, correct.
the land that was transferred to fee simple, Was everything without the conservation easement formally, but we put restrictive covenants on those properties.
And it can never be used for anything but,
Correct.
Or it reverts back to the town.
or it goes back to us, so it's open space no matter what,
Forever.
forever. I guess that's it.
Let me jump in.
Okay.
First off, I think we've all thought about this long and hard. And I can see both sides of the argument. I can see why people, like Bernie said, and others, I've had this conversation, I believe with Sarah and other people. I get we're making that case. Open space is very, very important. Where I disagree a little bit, well, and so we might, I look at that 10-year road program we did 2 years ago, and it was about $10 million, and that's on the light side. I think as you go down the age of roads, they're not gonna get any better, they're gonna deteriorate further, so I don't think $10 million was the number, I think it might be 11 or 12, but anyway, starting off and keeping it at $10 million, if we did take $5 million from the sewer sale, and we took $450,000 a year out of the operating account for the next 10 years, that would be a total of $9.5 million to get our roads, hopefully, fixed, and the culverts fixed, and the bridges fixed, without any tax increase. I heard somebody recently say, was telling me that, you know, I know a past supervisor that also told me this, that if the citizens are gonna want nicer roads, they're gonna have to pay for it. Well, I can't sit up here and say, I want a tax increase to pay for the roads, I just can't. Over the last 15 years, I did this study earlier this year and used it at a meeting like this, so if you've heard this before, you're not crazy. Over the last 15 years through this year, we will have spent an average of $450,000 a year on our roads, each year for the last 15 years. Over the last 15 years, if you take all the $9 million in open space and divide it by the 15 years, we've spent $600,000 a year on open space, an average a year. It's $450,000 for the roads, $600,000 for open space. I think it's time to balance it with our primary concern, which is the roads. If something changes before we spend that money, then we don't need it. We put it back to open space. I can't think of a more worthy cause as a second, but we don't know that. And I think you both mentioned the campus here. Yeah, I think eventually, I don't know, certainly within a 5 or 10 year period, we're going to need to upgrade this building. But it's going to be very expensive, but that's a whole nother thing I think we should look at and keeping into a capital account, put money away for a rainy day fund and use that for upgrading of the campus. So that's how I feel about it.
How about the residents?
Yes, Sarah.
I'm sorry, I may have missed this. What is the current balance in the capital reserve?
200,000.
A year or two ago, there was $1 million in the reserve, right? Or is that a different fund?
No, this is something, we should have started this, right?
Yeah, per the fund balance policy we started about a year and a half ago, we set up a separate.
Okay, what was the other
The road fund,
account called? No, it was not
Road
road fund.
improvement.
It was,
we have two, road improvement and capital.
that's what you have now. I'm really looking towards, maybe Brian remembers, a number of years ago, there was a 1.2 million reserve that got rolled over, maybe John remembers, but, so we've spent that in the meantime.
If you're speaking on perhaps the undesignated cash reserve or fund balance, we
That
do.
could have been it.
It could be that.
What was that?
Could you come up with a longer name?
Do we still have one of those?
We do, it's a buffer.
And how
around the
much is
township.
it?
Right now, about probably 1.6.
That's probably what I was thinking
Yeah.
about. So isn't that a contingency fund already?
Think about that in terms of operating. think about that in terms of the operating schedule and plan for the township. Capital needs, we want to think about that and have that designated apart from your operating. But that could be something that was mentioned in the past time, just giving you a little background.
Thank you. So that undesignated fund, and now you want to put all of the sewage windfall into the road fund?
No.
$5 million.
5 million into the road fund, which would cover the next 5 years of projects.
And
And
the
then
other-
800,000 into the capital fund, which would give us a balance of $1 million in the capital fund.
So we have 5.8 million from
Well,
the
5.7,
whole
I
sewage
think.
process.
I think somewhere around
Okay.
5.7.
And the Open Space Advisory Committee had made a request that you pay for the demolition out of that to free up the open space money to save open space. Have you given that consideration?
Yes, and you got to remember, when we went into negotiations with National Lands Trust, the price for the land was always going to be about 1.7, 1.8. So we haven't changed that. It's just that we changed how we're doing it.
And I remember that.
Okay.
And what was said at the time was that we needed to flip the cost. Natural Lands couldn't do the demolition with
Prevailing rates,
With-
yes.
grant money, specifically was the issue, I believe.
No,
And
that
then,
may be true, but
They would lose the grant if we didn't take down the buildings.
within 5 years, right.
Right.
And so, the Open Space Committee has thought, since the deal has gone through, and since the sewage sale came before the closing on Brincoed, that it would be possible, you now have funds that you could use, rather than take all of that money out of the Open Space Fund. You could use some of that money from the sewage sale. It was a contingency. Where else would you have gotten that money, the $653,000 to demolish the cow barns, if you hadn't sold the sewage plants?
It was coming out of the open space fund.
Right, so that's why the Open Space Committee said, well, if that's your only choice, okay. But you've got choice now. Thank you.
let me clear something up, just, because I'm not sure I heard it. I want to go back to the original Brincoed, was $1.8 million purchased. It was $1.8 million, and they would do the demolition. They insisted on the demolition, as a matter of fact, and it's still part of the conservation easement that we signed with them, is we have to demo all but one building. So the original was 1.8, but the more it got talked about, our attorneys advised us that with the Prevailing Wage Act, I got it right for the first time, Prevailing Wage Act, which is union scale, we would probably have to do that, and that Natural Lands bids, which was like $650,000 for the demo, didn't include that. So they worked some magic, got back to us, and they gave us a $900,000 deduction in lieu of a grant. So that brought down the purchase price from $900,000 to $900,000 plus the demolition. The demolition, like I said earlier, we had bids from $625 to $700 roughly.
Yeah, that sounds right.
With the demolition, we're concerned about overruns, but at $900,000 that they credit us against the sale of the 1,800, we have an additional $200,000 cushion for the demolition. It's still scary, we're not sure, you never are with a demolition project, particularly, it's not something we've ever done as a township before. Anyway, my point for going through those figures is, when you get down to the cost of $1 million or 900,000 plus the $700,000 for the reduction, $1.6 million, that brings down the cost of Brincoed down to approximately $13,000 an acre, which I hope you agree with me, that's a terrific price, okay? But not only that, I've used this before, you gotta keep your eye on the prize. The prize all along was open space. And Natural Lands could not have gotten their financing or the seller to agree without a commitment for $1.8 million from this township. And we did that, and then they changed the deal on us because, well, I feel like we're actually a partner with Natural Lands in this. They're terrific to work with. So we've got somebody that had the wherewithal to get 1,000 acres of conserved land, mostly in West Vincent Township. We got 500 acres of natural preserve that's going to surround our 72 acres that will be building free. And we have our 72 acre, here's the key point, 72 acre, let's call it a park, that was less, $10,000 less than buying TDRs from somebody, and we get to keep it, we get to use it, we get to put trails in it, we get to have a park for $13,000 an acre. Anyway, long-winded version, but it doesn't have anything to do with the road program, does it?
I have a
All right,
question.
sorry.
That's all right. It's for Bernie. You said that you wanted to put part of this money to open space. What part? How much?
$3 million.
How, and right now, I believe we are probably at like 40% preserved in our township. Do you think that it should be at a higher rate at the cost of our roads? You know, do you realize that
Yeah, once
Buckwood
Green
Bridge
is-
is going to fail and eight homes aren't going
Once
to be
green
able
is
to
gone,
get?
green's gone forever. You'll never get it back.
Yeah, I
And that's what
understand
makes
that.
this community so unique, is open space. So to take it away, to let it go,
White.
when you have an opportunity, to save it, why not make that a priority?
But it is a priority, and our township is a very rural priority. But you can't do it at the cost of our roads. We have all, you know, I voted for open space tax. I'm in favor of open space. But I'm not in favor of it and then having a tax increase because our roads start to fail. And I think you have to look down the road. I think you have to have a much broader view to say, what are we really doing? If we're taking money now that to buy open space, which is fine, which is there, but you know what, you always have the opportunity to go to another vote if you wanted to. But we have a road problem. And saying that Janie Lane is the only road that you really want to take care of under that, well, I think that's a little short-sighted when you think of all of the roads in our township. And then to brush off Buttonwood to say that looks like it's good. You know, have you walked down there? Have you tried to take a trailer over that bridge? Do you live in that neighborhood and worry about having a fire truck get there? That's a really big bridge, and it's a problem, and it has to be taken care of. We can't keep kicking that can down the road. That's a very, very scary thing, and we have other bridges that have not been taken care of for years and years and years. And to say that, well, you know, we'll just take care of those when they fail, with whose money and where? So as a taxpayer, I really have a problem with your thought process, that's all.
So let me ask you this, if we didn't have the sewer sale, where would the monies come from?
I don't know, I guess that we may have to do that, but that's not the case
So then why
today.
can't we split
But that's not the case
difference
today.
between two?
It's
We
not-
have two urgencies. One is open space, because
I don't see that as an urgency, I'm sorry. I see our roads as an urgency, this is my opinion. I see our roads as an urgency. I don't see open space at a 40% preserved township with more people preserving on their own and doing other things, and we still have an open space fund. So more land will be preserved. And then you have to look and say, well, you know, why should we not take care of the roads that we have that we know are failing? Why not take care of those?
Sure.
That's a problem.
I have an answer to your question. Where would the money come from?
Mhm.
They're sitting in front of you. Where?
Like it has for the last 15 years.
It would be through a tax increase. It would have to eventually.
Excuse me, just one more thing. And to confuse the sale of a utility as real estate, it was a utility. What we sold was the cash that utility made. It wasn't real estate. It was, certainly real estate has a component, but we still have all of that open space. Not 1 ounce of that has changed. We sold a utility, and I don't think that should be twisted around.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jim Berge, 1433 Birch Run Road. I'd like to expand on what Mike said as well as what Bernie said. Mike's right, the responsibility of the township is to maintain the roads. But how did we get to where we are today? You know, maybe we're not paying quite enough taxes. Maybe the responsibility is to increase the taxes slightly. And the taxes we pay in the township, those funds are the most immediately visible to us as far as the roads and the services that we get from the township. It's the lowest taxes we pay. Look at the county tax, look at the school tax, then look at this tax. It's rather small comparatively speaking, okay? So maybe we should be paying just a bit more tax just to maintain the roads. And secondly, the roads, once they're fixed, they're not going to stay fixed. They're going to have to be maintained. So what's going to happen after we don't have any more windfalls coming into the township? I think Bernie's position is a good one, that, you know, the land, the open space is going to be here forever for all of us and our children and our grandchildren to benefit from. We have the windfall right now. If you won the lottery, okay, you decided to share it with your children, would you give it all to one child, or would you kind of give it to the rest of the children? You have to share it out when you have the windfall, and I think right now we have the opportunity to do some really good things, including tearing down the cow barns without affecting the open space money that we have. These projects, these 1, 2, 3, 4 priority projects to take a look at. As far as the number 1 priority project, I understand there might be some grant money because it's a conservation easement rather than a TDR, so there's grant money available for that. So we have to discuss how we might be able to get more money and maybe only use a fraction of that $1 million, whatever you said it would cost us to get it. So these are things we have to look at, but also I think we have to consider that we have some opportunities now immediately available to us. The Hill property, for example, we have willing people who are willing to conserve the land, basically with TDRs. That's going to be, it's a very valuable property that drains into the French Creek from a conservation and from a possible pollution standpoint. It's probably one of the more valuable properties I see in the area to conserve. So I think we have the opportunity now to do it. We have the money to do it. There's money coming in through the open space fund, from the taxes. I think now's the time to consider all these things, including the roads. And I would propose maybe splitting it down the middle. 2.5 for the open space, 2.5 for the roads. And that's my comment.
Jim brought up something that I had originally wasn't going to mention, but he said that our taxes are low. Township taxes are low compared to county or school. That's true. But also, if I remember correctly, West Vincent Township has one of the highest tax rates in the entire part of Chester County. And if that's the case, well, just raise a little more. It's a good way to go and keep people out of the township because of the cost of doing it. Going back to the roads, everybody in the township uses the township roads with regularity. I've been around long enough to remember when the township roads got so bad that they did an emergency thing. I still remember because I came out of my driveway, turned, and I had 4-inch rock to go over on a motorcycle going to Daytona, fully loaded up to go. And I still vividly remember it, and we had a special bond. So when you ask the question, well, what would you use the money, how would you spend it if you didn't have this? The answer is, we go and raise taxes by having a bond issue that has to come out. Going back to Buttonwood Bridge. Bernie, have you ever gone over that bridge?
I have.
Do you feel comfortable? Yeah. You went over a bridge that is 1 lane wide, currently has a reinforcement so that it can carry fire trucks. There has been a fire on that road where the house burned to the ground basically because they couldn't get water to it. That's a real public safety issue. And I think that the people on that road might have a different view of being quite so flippant of, it's no big thing.
Right. I wasn't flipping over it. My position is that as we have gone out and looked at these roads as a committee, and certainly Janie Lane was the one that really rose to the top, and that's why I brought that in there. I'm not discounting Buttonwood. I know that that's far down the list, but Janie was at the top. That's why I sought to, bring some monies available for that road.
It's far down the list until it fails. That
I'm
bridge.
one person on a committee.
Let me finish, please.
Sure.
That bridge was rebuilt in 2012. At that time, we were told it's rebuilt, it's good for another 10 years. We got about 6 years from it, and all of a sudden, hey, we can't get a fire truck over it. We can't get a fuel oil truck over it. We can't get a sewage removal truck over it. So we've done a temporary fix so that it's got a weight limit that people can use it for some heavier loads right now. But that bridge is not in a stable condition. And to go and say, well, we really don't have to worry about it until it fails, I think it's a bad thing, my opinion. I'm for using the money on the roads. It, it goes back, those are used by everyone in the township. They will go and be in a lot better shape than they've been in the past, because in the past, there wasn't a road program. It was, oh, it's broken, we need to fix it. Not a good way to go and operate, in my opinion. Thank you.
And Bernie, Buttonwood Bridge is on the schedule for 2020, not next year, but the following year.
Okay.
So it is a top priority.
Suzanne?
It's the top priority?
No, it is a top priority.
Two things. I want to say that Buttonwood Bridge is a disaster, and if it were your house that burned down to the ground because they couldn't get the water in there, you'd be very unhappy. And it was a fluke kind of thing, but gosh only knows we're a heartbeat away from other flukes. The other thing about raising taxes in the township, I've lived here for 40 some odd years, and one of the things that drew me to this township was the diversity of people who lived here. And we've lost that because our taxes have gotten so high that a lot of our old residents can no longer, they're gone, afford to live here. So raising taxes is not always the answer. I don't know about you, but I pay, all of our school taxes are pretty high. We're very fortunate, we have a good school system, that's a wonderful thing. I have no children, and I pay those taxes happily. I would like to see the roads fixed. The traffic generation in this township from its growth is enormous. I don't travel that much, but I have to tell you, when I pull out on St. Matthews and Pewtown Road at a time of commuting, I have to wait and wait and wait and wait because there are 25 cars that are going by there. So our roads are being used heavily not only by our township, by other people who are further out, and I'm not sure, but we have to take care of the roads. And we have to think about them. And the Buttonwood thing is crazy. I don't know what's wrong with Janie Lane. I have a feeling it's an engineering problem more than anything else, but that's just my opinion. I think that we've lost the ability to engineer properly in this world so that the sides run out and all that jazz. I mean, I see this in other places where I have properties and the same thing is happening, where the culverts on the side of the road take all the water and take all the gravel away, and that's an issue. But I think it's engineering more than anything else. So that's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want your road paved?
No.
Barry Libero. I thought I'd look through some of the comments put out publicly just to get a feel for what's going on in the township. So I got a couple questions for the supervisors. I went to West Vincent Voices just to see what's being said there, and Jamie McVicker says it's an outrage that John Jacobs and Mike Schneider are so anti-open space, fighting all the opportunities to keep this township beautiful. With the funds we residents approved, small tax increases for it twice. What open space programs have you turned down?
2,500 on appraisal?
And you haven't even necessarily turned that down yet?
No.
You did the, what was it, the 16-year LLC one?
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was that was supposed to be $275,000 was the request from the township for that. And there were people in the audience when I watched the video on that said, just pay the man, give him the money. I don't know.
What did you settle on?
Settled on $200,000. $200,000. So you save the taxpayers $75,000, which would be the equivalent of, if you said $25,000 per TDR, 3 TDRs, a TDR is roughly 3 acres, so that leaves 9 more acres to be saved of open space. And there were people screaming at you in the audience that said, just give the man the money, he needs relief. Now, I never even heard a thank you on that.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Sarah Schick says 2 of them wanted to all go to the roads. They have turned down a small, under $3,000 request from the HRC to have a professional historic architect document the Cow Palace, not just photos, but a complete description, including the legacy farming proceeding and because of it. When I passed this request with a comment that the study be recommended by Chesco Planning Commission staff, Mike misunderstanding the line between, I think it's supposed to be county, not country, county and municipal responsibilities, asked why the county wasn't going to pay for it. Just a comment in there that I guess that's an open space problem. I don't understand that. Was that something that should be done, or could it be?
I mean, from what I remember that being brought up, I thought somebody in the audience said that they know somebody that could do it for free. That's the only thing I remember about that request.
Anybody else, Bernie, remember anything about that? No? John?
I remember.
I happen to remember it.
And
And
Maria
I don't believe
remembered.
anybody ever contacted the gentleman.
Okay.
Do you believe the contact information was given to the history committee?
It was.
My wife gave it to you.
To who?
My
To
wife.
Vicky,
To whom?
to Vic Laubach.
Oh, well, then it never got to us.
I believe
But-
she's the chairperson.
But
Next.
taking pictures wasn't the point.
Barry's got the floor.
He's given me the floor. He's reading my
I
words.
don't believe I actually
I took
did.
it back.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for putting my opinion out.
You're quite welcome. I'm cordial that way. Followed by that, Sarah Schick. She said she recently heard that the police department asked for $50,000 to upgrade their computers and were turned down. Is there any truth to that?
Barry, and that's not germane to this topic.
Oh, well, I'm just going through this because there's a
Maybe,
discussion.
but
Okay.
That would have to be held.
Okay, great.
on the
That's
agenda.
not a problem. We can go on. There was a suggestion from Stephen Bazil about putting the money into an interest-bearing account, using the interest only for projects that benefit our community. This payback would be in perpetuity, where we can, I won't use the word, get all away and have nothing for the future. I think the roads are the future. So I went in and started checking out comments about roads. Big headline, pretty sure our township will be communicating with us on the sharp end of an attorney after this storm. So apparently there's issues with drains that have been causing problems on some road that keep flooding somebody's basement, which is clearly a road issue. That's one. Another one was from 2017, asking about the roads being hazardous, from Stacy Green Casto. Sarah Schick says that stretch of road, talking about Horseshoe Trail, was on the plan for 2016.
That's
and-
just hearsay.
Just reading other people's.
Why are you?
Facebook, yeah.
I'm getting to the point of why the road maintenance needs done. So they spent money instead doing a road study to make sure that the roads needed repair and what ones needed done, which had never been done in the township of record, which is where they discovered how many bridges on the verge of collapse were in bad shape. How many was it? 2, 3, Hollow Road,
Culverts.
culverts.
There's at least 3 or 4 culverts that needed repair, at least one bridge or what we call bridges. But that's,
Okay. Things on Green Lane. And one last interesting one, in the latest floods, Davis Lane, I don't know if this is even in the roads report, but Davis Lane, there's some pictures taken of the bridge where the road crew had to put metal plates back that had gotten pushed off because of the creek. Does anybody know why the metal plates are there?
To keep the horses nervous.
Because there's a hole in the bridge and the metal plates are over top of it.
Right.
That is also in very bad shape. Now, they paved on one side, but they paved on the other, and left the metal plates there years ago, never fixed it. There is serious problems with our roads in this township, and once they're fixed, because they've been neglected for years, then they won't need fixed for a long time if they're maintained properly, which they weren't. So, to say that they're always gonna need maintained, sure, everything needs maintained, open space needs maintained, but the bottom line is, if you fix the roads and get them back to what they should have been and never neglected to, then it's gonna be another generation out before there's really gonna be serious concerns with the roads. A lot more money needs to go to these roads because it's been neglected over a period of time. It's a constant problem, it's been a problem with Pennsylvania as a whole. That's why they ended up raising the fuel taxes. Now they have to do all these bridges because, guess what? Pennsylvania bridges are doing the same thing everywhere. It needs to be done. We have the windfall, it should be done for that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience?
So I promised Donna Delaney, who's one of my neighbors on Beaver Hill, but I'm forgetting her exact house number, that I would leave this for her. She said, I would like to voice my support that this money, this is specific to the sewer proceeds, this money be used for road improvement, township building improvement to aid our wonderful police department, and in addition to these needed services, a large part of this asset be retained as a permanent asset by adding it to our open space fund to forever improve the quality of life for our West Vincent citizens by keeping taxes lower, improving air and water quality, mitigating climate change, lowering the cost of services such as road maintenance by mitigating flooding and the need for added police, firemen, schools, etc., and benefiting health by adding public trails and recreation to our community. The money for the demolition of the buildings on Brown Co-ed should come from this money, as using the open space fund for this by calling demolition maintenance is probably illegal and at best going against the wishes of the taxpayers who have voted twice to have their money spent to preserve open space. So those are Donna's words.
Thank you.
I would just add on my own behalf that it does sound like we can all agree that our roads do need fixing, that we have some serious road issues. But it does also sound like this has been a problem that's been building over many years, and it's not a problem that we're going to be able to fix in 2018. And so using a short-term windfall for something that sounds like a seriously underfunded area of our township may not be the best option for the next 20 years. Maybe it'll fix it for the next 5 years. But, you know, when you're looking at 25 years, 30 years, I intend to be here till I'm in my grave. I'm going to be driving these roads, and if I have to pay a little bit more...
Deborah, I don't think you meant a 5-year and then they fall off and they crumble. It's a 5-year expenditure to get them for a 20 or 30-year lifespan.
Yeah, these are major projects that we have on.
Right, but if we've had $10 million over the past 10 years, what was it, $10 million over the past 5 years?
Space had $9 million, the
Road had around 6.
It sounds like we've been doing catch-up for quite a while, and it sounds like we still need to do catch-up for a few more years.
In the last 15 years, we've spent $6 million on the roads.
And 9 on open space.
Don't mix them up.
So it sounds to me like we're still behind on the roads. That was what I was concluding from what everybody else was saying.
We are, because the roads were being underfunded for 15 years.
Right.
That's why we did the road program, to identify all the problems that weren't being taken care of in the past. And, you know, you have to pay the piper. Now, we have all these problems, and we have to fix them.
Right.
They're not going to go away. They're not maintenance issues.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, so we need every cent we have.
We still need the maintenance.
That's exactly
on
right.
top of that.
Yes, but the maintenance goes down lower when you fix something.
Yes.
So, we are, or at least I am, proposing that the money go to the roads, because that is going to save us from having to have a tax increase. The residents of this township voted for a tax for open space. That money should be used for open space.
That you're able to argue with me before I've even made my point.
Wait, you're going to make that point?
I was going to say that I think that it's worth considering more than one expenditure, because while everybody does seem to think that the roads are important and a lot of people think that open space are important. It doesn't have to be an either or. It seems to me like it should be some of both.
It has been either or for the last 15 years. A third more goes into open space than is in the roads, and we're paying the price now.
Thank you.
Jim Dyson, I live in Weatherstone.
Specific tax for open
The-
space.
Yes.
Folks,
Go to the microphone, so it's not
Jim,
just me.
Sarah, please.
The asset that we fortunately got some money for was created
To the
by,
microphone a little bit.
was created by developers who built these developments. The funds that built them came from the homeowners that bought into those developments. I don't really have a problem with using the actual approximately $4 million for the sale of the asset, but there was over $1 million in the reserve fund, which came directly from the homeowners that used the sewer systems. And according to Bucks County, when they gave their presentation, the real money maker on that case was Weatherstone. And I think some of that $1 million should be spent for primarily the benefit of Weatherstone residents. I don't have any big idea in mind, but one thing that I've asked for a while is to get the trail through the woods and that bridge repaired or repaved. We have funds there, and I think something like that, which will come back to the residents of Weatherstone who are predominant users of that. We would benefit from something like that. Maybe we develop a park at the northern end of that at Westover and Bertrand Road. So I remember a while ago people were talking about putting like a nature trail through that, what's really a wetlands, but something with a raised walk or anything. But something like that I think should be considered for that end of the township so that we get something back, because we're going to be paying to Bucks County now to build up their reserve fund. So we were fortunate to keep the money, but I think it should be used for the people that put it in.
First off, let me just comment, I've been on the record on this, that I think it's $1.1 million we have from the capital reserve account from Weatherstone. And it was my opinion, and I agree with you, if there was any way at all we could give that back, not just to Weatherstone, but to the individual homeowners that paid into that, we would. But we've been advised it would be illegal if we did that until we found a suitable project. I believe you met with our manager and discussed some things. Your homeowners association has. I recognize those faces. Yes, John.
And we're really talking about different money. The reserve money is not in the sale money.
Correct.
So you have to differentiate that.
Yeah.
Well, all the money's township money at this point.
We understand that. What we're saying is the money that you're talking about tonight is not the reserve, the money that was paid in
No.
reserves.
Correct.
That's a different bundle of money.
Well,
Yeah, it
It's
came out.
still in your coffers, we understand that. But you're talking about money on top of what, the money you're talking about tonight.
No, John.
The
Yes,
reserve fund.
Jim brought up the capital reserve. That's why I mentioned.
But that's part of the 5.8
5.7 million, yes. 5.7 is the total
with reserve.
with reserves.
So John is trying to spend it.
Not your reserves only, but others' reserves too.
Except there were only two that paid for themselves.
That's correct.
And like I say, Bucks County admitted that the first thing they really wanted to do was raise ours significantly because we were such a good system there. They knew they could make a lot of money off of it. So we're paying again twice, and I think we need something back in some manner.
I won't argue with that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments? Oh, I apologize. I was looking the wrong way. Sorry, Jim.
I'm Jamie McVicker, and I'd first like to thank Barry for bringing my post to light. I would suggest in the future that you have a policy that no one's comments be read into the record or even presented without their okay.
Jamie, I appreciate it. Right now we're on the sewer
Could
sale.
you start over again?
Right now we're on the sewer sale.
Be that as it may, that's my suggestion to the board. I stand by my comments, and if you have evidence that I was wrong, I'd be interested in hearing from both of you that you aren't anti-open space. There have been very few projects approved for open space monies to be used, and only when we pack this room with people who talked you out of refusing that open space
Chairman,
money.
I gotta name one project that we voted against for open space that came before us in the Board of Supervisors.
I asked you first. Give
No,
me evidence.
no.
Give me evidence
You're-
of how you
you're
support
wrong,
open space.
Jamie.
How about
Prove
Britton?
it.
How about Britton Glen? How do you think that happened?
Okay, that's one.
One, yeah, okay, that's one. You're right, it is.
So what's your proof that you guys aren't anti?
Chairman, I don't
How
need to
many-
prove anything to you.
How many-
You're wrong, and you're making it up, and I can't believe I know you better than this.
In the 16 years, you bringing that up? My argument with 16 years was a faulty appraisal, period. Didn't take into account the 319 rollback taxes when it was doing it. It just, and the appraisal going up 40, I'm not an expert, so I can't say for sure, but a property going up 40% in 8 months, I just don't buy it. Hate to say it, but I think the appraisal was faulty, so therefore the amount that we were going to pay was faulty, and that's why we offered a lower number. But we're still for the open space.
You're still what?
Still for open space.
Okay.
Okay, we just don't want to waste money.
And I think you made a fair point. You made that point over and over again. At no point in that entire presentation did you guys ever say that you were in favor of protecting 16 years. And that's why we went on for 30, 40 comments of people trying to argue for you to make that grant.
I
But
think
there's
there's the
so
amount
few-
of money, actually.
It
Go
took
ahead.
us about 3 minutes to make the deal when we got out of the room.
I know, so why didn't you start with that? Why didn't you start by saying, we
Jamie-
totally support this issue, but we don't agree with
Agree
the
on the
amount?
amount.
And we wouldn't have had to go for 2
Jamie, you
hours.
may not want to hear from everybody in the office, but, in the room, but we're committed.
But if you had made that point in the beginning, you wouldn't have
We
needed to.
tried, Jamie. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job on
You
granting.
didn't. You have control of the mic. You
But I
can-
tried. They kept coming back to the appraisal value. If they sold it in the end for the appraisal value and added in the money, the grant money, they were gonna come out with a superior profit than should have been deserved for trying to save
It was all
open
about
space.
making whole, and it became
Again.
obvious that wasn't a
Again,
deal with
I wish
whole.
you had made that more clear in the
Well,
beginning.
people were yelling at us to.
You guys
pay
control the microphone.
Well, I understand that, but they didn't want to hear a lower number. They said, it's only 275,000, pay it. Give the guy the money. Okay, and they were actually selling the 16 years as saving this property. When I asked Bob straight out, he was sitting right there, is this ever going to be developed? No. And then everybody was like, well, he will die in 20 or 30 years, and then what? And that was the argument. But it wasn't a high priority property that was going to be developed now. So how did it get so high on the list? I have no freaking idea.
Well, I don't either, because I'm not on that committee.
So there's
But again-
some faults with
but
the whole.
but
There's a
again-
vacancy.
But again, I would suggest that we look back at the record of open space of your predecessors compared to the very few projects that you guys have.
I would like to look at that
And
too.
that's-
What happened the 3 previous years before I came on board, or 4 or 5 years? Nothing. I don't even know if the open space committee met, did they?
I can answer that because that's why I stood up. I've been attending meetings and for a number of years now. And basically, hold on a second, Mike and John got on the same time. Before then, there were no open space review board meetings and there was no open space money spent.
I appreciate your comment, but one person at a time.
I don't mind. One point, 2 points I'd like to make, and I thought I would be going quickly, but I'm sorry to take up so much time. One is to ask you both if you believe the many studies that show that open space reduce taxes.
I don't believe it. Well, it reduces some taxes, but especially school taxes, it doesn't. Because what happens, our township is not the only township in the school district. So as we preserve our land and less development, we're pushing it to other areas that don't have that same policy. So those same kids are going to school in our school district, which means we have to pay a certain portion based on our assessed value to cover the school cost. Now, the school cost last year, I think, was $19,000 per pupil. West Vincent was the highest paying township of 20-some thousand per student, based on census information. So we were paying higher than East Namio and everyone else. Now, we get to East Vincent, they were like somewhere around, I think, $14,000 per student, because they have more kids in the school system. So we were paying a higher proportion.
But you're speaking to school taxes.
That's the school tax, what's the biggest one?
But in general, do you think it keeps down infrastructure, fire companies, police departments?
It should, yes, I agree.
It should, it does, and studies show it over and over again. If there was one person living in West Vincent Township, what would the taxes be? If there were 10 people, if there was 100 people, if there was 100,000 people, taxes go up as there is more development. And
Well, that's
why
not necessarily true. It depends on the commercial mix. Okay, so you think that our taxes are lower than Westchester, Great Valley, come on, name them, any of them. Our taxes are one of the highest. School and county and local. We are higher than Great Valley because they have commercial development. We don't.
But open space in our township would keep taxes down. My final point is just that I live on a road, the same one Brian mentioned earlier. We live on the same road, friendly neighbors. And we have many potholes, terrible road conditions, terrible drainage problems, and I like it that way. And I would far rather use my tax dollars for open space, and would definitely support a slight tax increase to address the road issues. And it sounds like about 95% of the people in the room agree with me.
Brian? I'll start out the last part, because as Jamie mentions, we're in the same road. And I've observed the road conditions of my road, our road. And since this board has, taken its position, taken its office, the road conditions have noticeably improved compared to what they were before. They're regularly smoothed out. We don't get as many potholes. They do get repaired at a reasonable amount of time. And there was work done on that road that made it much more of a speedway, which probably would have contributed to more potholes. In fact, it did until the new, I'm going to say the new administration came into result, particularly with Erica going and running the road crew and the road program, that, it got a lot better on that road as far as its condition is. The other thing that I'm going to bring up, since one of them I did get through, is quoting stuff from public forums. If I remember right, or if I understood that correctly, Barry was quoting from a Facebook group, which Facebook is very proud to go and say it's a public forum. I don't think it was a closed group. If it was a closed group, then, hey, it shouldn't be done. But, hey, it's like quoting from the newspaper, the same as that. That's it for me. Thank you.
Can we wrap this discussion up?
Very quick,
Two more. Thank you. One from each side.
Kim Gillisbach, 904 Birch Run. So just to clarify, the comparison of spending on open space was an average of 600,000 a year?
Get a little closer to
Yeah,
the
sure.
I'm going to pull it towards you.
Oh, is that better?
Much.
Oh, okay. So 600,000 a year average over the last 15 years on open space, and 450 about on roads per year. So this is a question. Was that, the open space funding, was that always taken from the amount that was the specific tax for open space?
Well,
Not from the general budget?
Some money was being taken from general.
Okay. So, because my question would be, if the money for open space was from the specific tax that we as residents voted for, that is a specific amount that should be spent. And if we, depending on how much was taken from the open, or the whole budget, if it's not getting a share like all other expenses would be, you're really, allowing for spending on everything else at, a higher percentage if you're really just spending that open space money for open space. So what I'm saying is, you could compare anything in your budget to open space money and say, oh, we're spending that much more money on open space than roads or sewer or whatever. But it's not really apples to apples
No,
because it was
separate.
voted for. So making that comparison, I just want to point out that that is what the majority of the people wanted to spend that money on at the time that was enacted. If there's a need to spend money on something else, then we need to look at the budget, and maybe we do need to vote on something because it's important to everyone to have roads that they can travel. So just wanted to clarify that comparison.
No, it's a good point.
And we agree.
Okay.
Open space money should be used for open space.
But it's a
Other
little-
money should be used for the running of the township.
Just,
That's simple.
I don't know whether you heard this part tonight, but we have an open space balance of approximately at the end of this year, which if we don't spend any money, will be approximately $525,000. Is that about right, Eric?
530, somewhere around there.
It'll increase every year after this, approximately, at least in the short term, $260,000 a year surplus over the EIT tax collected minus the bond payments. So if we have 500,000, next year we'll have 760 approximately. And hopefully, although because we like open space, that will go up incrementally because incomes rise, therefore the EIT tax rate. But there won't be any new residents in the area, so we won't have development. We don't want that. But my point for mentioning that is I totally have forgotten what my point was at this point, except $60,000.
Thank you.
Yes.
George Zelchinos, 1415 Hollow Road, Berkshire. First, I want to thank you for exercising fiscal responsibility here and actually looking down the road. I mean, if we have $5 million in the next 5 years plus in road projects, those projects have been kicked down the road for a long time, and any civil engineer will tell you if you let a road go to failure, the cost of maintaining it is 10 times what it is to do the maintenance. It's just like the roof on your house or anything else. So I think that it's laudable what you've done and actually done a study on this stuff, even though there's some people that said we didn't need any study. $5 million, it's basically a $5 million shortfall. I think we would be looking at a tax increase at this point. And this is unfortunately the cost of neglecting the roads for so long. They got to the point where we have to rebuild many of them. And in any case, I just think I'm glad to see the township's thinking in terms of a reserve fund. I don't know how many years we went where we always were out of cash and had to take a tax anticipation loan because we didn't have enough money to cover the operating budget of the township until the tax bills came in. So I'm happy to see that. And I, for one, would rather not have another tax increase. We had about 4 of them in the general fund in a row in about 6 years in the 2000s, and I think we're at a pretty decent rate now. We have the money to fund the maintenance of the roads if we fix them and get them in good shape. We have a lot of money also slated for open space. When we're done, just from the bond issue, with interest, we'll have spent $16 million on open space. $16 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. Now, given, about $5 million of it's going to be interest, bankers make out well on it, but we've certainly preserved a lot of land in this township. We're over 40%. And if you add, now I don't know what the final outcome of the open space map, I know it's being worked on, is, but I think if you add up all the open space, all the land that's township owned, all the land that is can't be developed now because it already is developed, you get to a number where you have 70 or 80% of the township spoken for already. There's very little left, and I think we're in great shape. There's not very many other townships here in this area of Chester County that can say that. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
The longer this goes, the more comments I have. Back to your 13,000 an acre for the open space at Green Coed. When you put in the cost of demolition, that's another $9,083 for demolition. That's just the money from the open space fund. And if you think you have to put in another $200,000 from the general fund, that brings the cost per acre of Green Coed Farm, the new park, to $24,778 to the township. So it's still a good deal because we've got a park and a lot of open space, but it's just the same thing about confounding your comparisons. We didn't have all of the data in the one calculation,
what
so
you're saying, so, but
it's okay, maybe I'll explain, we'll get it in the
Maybe
minutes
you're
or
right.
something. Okay, as you remember when the sewage sale was first coming up, I suggested you set up a committee of township residents, some of you guys, township staff, to look at what are the needs of the township beyond the real obvious ones. When you start talking about infrastructure, talking about the house that burned down at the end of Buttonwood Lane, there are a lot of small infrastructure things. Jim Deisinger's request, which we've heard for years now about the trail at Weatherstone and creating a nature trail in Weatherstone A, those kind of things. But also, we could put standpipes in all of the township. But we could set up a program so that the township would subsidize putting standpipes in our ponds. Do you know what that means? It means putting a little hydrant head up out of the pond. It means that there would be closer sources of water for most of the township. It is only those developments that George just counted as
back to the sewer funds.
Yeah, so this is another example, and if what you've done is said we're going to put it in roads,
Not all of it.
without thinking about what are all of the other things. I believe there was also a suggestion that you ask each of your advisory committees if there are things that if they had a wish list, are there things that they've said, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we could? And so I was hoping that you would make it a more collaborative process and that you would engage the community beyond this public meeting.
You know, I understand what you're saying, but also as a supervisor, we were elected for the best interests of the township, which isn't always agreeable to everybody. But the first thing I learned at the first educational seminar I went to after being a supervisor was they said, you're not always going to be liked, you're going to have to put your big boy pants on and do what you think is right.
And getting back to that, we're looking at what has to be done, what's in need right now, not the wishes and wants of the community, because we don't have enough money for all that right now. We only have $5 million, and we have a road program for the next 5 years over $5 million. So we have to address that first. That's infrastructure, it has to be done.
All right,
We can't say, well, we'll only do 4 million, so we're not gonna do all these things that need to be done, and we're gonna do the wants. I think we have to do the needs first, and then we get to the wants. And if we do the needs, we'll probably be able to have some money for the wants.
Okay.
If we don't do the needs, we're never gonna have the money for the wants.
And you will have more than 5 million because you'll have whatever you put in on an annual basis now, whether it's the
That's right.
average 450 that John quoted, or whether it's more, like I believe you're spending more than that much this year, aren't
And
you?
getting back to Weatherstone, we have a capital fund of $1 million for bigger projects for the township.
Well, I'm not speaking specifically about Weatherstone. There are a couple of things there, but there are things that would benefit people all over the township.
Right.
And so, do you have that list, or would you like help in creating that list? That's what I'm
Well,
saying,
I
is
guess
that
at
there are
some
a
point-
lot of talented people in this municipality, and I just wish you.
And I would agree with you. On the capital fund, I would agree, because that money is not spoken for. In other words, we haven't identified projects other than the
Except that
township.
except wasn't that the money you were gonna set aside as a reserve?
Another 800,000, bring it up to $1 million, yes. But it's for projects. It's for the.
So it's not a
complex.
contingency fund? I thought you were gonna have a contingency fund.
We already have a built-in contingency
That's for
fund.
operating.
That's what we do every year. We put,
All
like,
right,
what?
and so
That's
operating
separate.
takes care of
Separate.
ice storms like that
Exactly.
2 years ago and stuff like that.
Yeah, this would be a capital improvement fund for projects.
Okay, how'd you come up with the 40% conserved land in the township?
George?
I have no idea.
I have a list somewhere.
And my answer would be, if we've spent 16 million on open space and the fund still goes, we'll find more land to preserve, because I really don't think that land that has been developed to its maximum is necessarily conserved.
Thank you, sir.
You did, George.
No, I didn't. You misquoted.
He said it wasn't a
It
develop-
can't be developed further.
It doesn't count it as safe.
Let's wrap up this discussion,
Okay.
gentlemen.
I'd like to make a motion. I make a motion that we move $5 million from the township sewer funds to a designated road improvement fund and move $769,976.41 from the sewer fund to the designated capital fund.
I assume you're not going to second that.
You assume correct.
I'll second that motion. Can I see that paper?
That's just Mike's motion.
Any comments from the audience? We haven't already heard.
Yeah. Just one more.
And I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
I said I had
Just
one
one
more.
more.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean that.
You know what it is, though, now that we have a capital fund. Now that you're gonna have a capital fund, I recommend you use the capital fund for the demolition of the cow barns. Thank you.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Bernie? Nay. That's 2 for 1. Thank you, folks. And your opinions are listened to, whether or not. Whether, I hope you have. Okay, moving on. We have an ordinance authorizing advertisement of the First Amendment to the intermunicipal agreement with Upper Euclid Township. Tom.
Yeah, really, I move to authorize the township manager to advertise the ordinance authorizing the board of supervisors to enter into the First Amendment to the intermunicipal agreement with Upper Euclid Township and Upper Euclid Municipal Authority, which amends the updated intermunicipal sewer service agreement which was approved by the board of supervisors in ordinance number 121.
Can't hear.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, speaking of. What's that? Sewer service agreement, which was approved by the board of supervisors in ordinance number 121-2003, adopted on September 29, 2003.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Erica, you want to give a brief explanation? This is a minor change to an ordinance that we approved a month or so ago?
We have an intermunicipal agreement for the sewer operation for Upper Euclid Township Authority. Through the Buyer Station development, they're looking to finish the sewer services that serve the Ewing Tract and Buyer Station. They had approached us as West Vincent originally was going to be the ones assuming the ownership of the parcels with the improvements made by Upper Euclid Township. Upper Euclid Township will take now with the new development the ownership over that land. It reduces our liability, but what we have added is a clause that if it would ever not remain as sewer facilities, that would revert back to West Vincent Township. So that's what it does, is it preserves the land only for that purpose, but it takes the liability off of West Vincent to Upper Euclid Township.
Any questions for that? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have sad news. Sam Cantrell from the Sustainability Committee, I'm told, is moving out of the area.
He's already moved.
That's a shame. So he's resigning from the Sustainability Committee.
I move to accept the resignation of Sam Cantrell from the Sustainability Committee.
I'll second the motion.
I can't imagine what the discussion would be, but is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Erica, we are getting,
Yeah, we'll have to, Sam's role, that membership, his term was 12/31/18. So it does bring us up to a new term for the new year, so we'll have to look at that. We'll just have to certainly put out and advertise that we're looking to replace that.
okay. Next is a change order for the Flint Road paving project. Is that to add the speed limit signs to 75 miles an hour?
Not quite yet. The paving, I'm sorry, you want to make that?
Okay, I'll make it first. I move to approve the change order number 1 for the installation of additional stormwater facilities to Flint Road in the amount of $7,760.
I'll second. Erica, you want to explain what this one's for? It's just a simple one?
Sure, it is. Things have been progressing well with the paving. Schoolhouse Lane is done. There's some, a little bit of ditching that needs to be done, but Flint Road, the paving should finish up this week, but as far as the drainage improvements, there was one additional pipe that was noted in the field that the contractor had suggested. And that's what this covers, is the labor to install that. We actually have that on hand, the pipe.
The total project will now be $412,897.
Yes.
What's it?
And when's it going to be finished?
Hopefully, we've got a good few days of weather, I think, and the end of this week.
The residents are holding up well with it? Because that's got to be a pain.
Yeah, so far.
Any comments? Seeing none, I have a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we'll on to the public comment on non-agenda items. To speak, just come up to one of the registers and I'll call your name. Sarah.
Hi. The previous repair on Flowing Springs Road below Birch Run and Hollow, Bob and Marilee might be able to speak to it. I wasn't here, but it took quite a while, but I don't recollect that it resulted in a bridge widening. Was that what, does anybody know what happened? I mean, I know it was closed for a long time. Yeah.
Hurricane knocked out, it was not widened.
Okay, so it wasn't, and is this the same bridge they're talking about fixing now, or is it a different bridge?
What, the bridge at Whitney's or ours?
What bridge are you talking about? The Penn,
What road?
Flowing, it was mentioned, Flowing Springs,
Right
below,
below the intersection of
Below.
Flowing Springs.
And
below Hollow Birch Run,
South.
below the post office, right?
Birch Run
Or, no,
South or
you-
north?
Yeah, you mentioned Birch Run, but it's the Birch Run Bridge below Hollow, is that what you're talking about?
What road is the bridge on?
Birch Run.
It's not a Flowing
Not a-
Springs.
So it's
No,
not,
that's what I'm
okay.
sorry, I'm
Yeah,
not-
because I was thinking that bridge was done just a few years ago, so what was
Yeah,
the
no,
previous
no.
repair? Has anybody checked to see if that bridge is on our historic inventory?
That's what I'd like to check as a result of my meeting. Thank you.
We'll help
That
you.
was a question.
I'll
yeah.
help you find the data if you need it.
All right, thank you.
The other thing is, anyone else commented that PICO has been overzealous with their herbicides under the wires? They said they were just going to spray vines and things that were impinging on the electric line. They killed spice bush, they killed all kinds of stuff that would never get up there. Is there anything the township can do to constrain their behavior? I had previously put my property on a no spray
Yes,
list, and they
that's-
said that they had.
Yes, that is
And
what
then
you
they
need to do.
sprayed, yeah, but it didn't work, because they sprayed the whole length of my
If that does
property.
occur, and if there's any resident that has that issue, contact the township, we'll contact PICO. But they're required to have their own permit for
Should
that.
I
to be
send
done.
you an email
That
about
would be
this tomorrow?
fine. Yeah, that would be fine, but that's what we'll do. And we've done that for other issues or complaints that are resulting with even pipeline work or any other
Okay.
type of work. But that's controlled through their permit process. But if they're not complying with that permit process, we need to know about it so we can alert, to that situation and authority.
Okay, because it looks like Roundup, and I don't think we want Roundup used
I
in our
understand.
watersheds.
I
Like
understand.
wantonly, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, could you ask what chemical they're using
Sure.
and let us know? Aaron?
I want to come back around one more time about the open space. I still haven't heard a thank you from anybody in the audience for the $75,000 you saved the township for open space.
You missed it when it happened.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah, it did. Second thing is for people that are so unopen space or anti-open space, as I'm hearing from somebody. I've been coming to the township meeting since 2005. Bryn Coed had been a project that had been yammered on about for at least 15 years from now. Since the 2000s, early 2000s, maybe earlier than that. Nothing ever got done with it. Nothing ever got done with it. Mike and John got on the board and it got done. It's now preserved. 71, 73 acres, whatever it is, the seed money that got that in preserves 450 to 500 acres because of that cooperation with NLT. And then the bigger picture of it is 1,000 acres it's eased. So people that are anti-open space preserved or eased 1,000 acres. That's never been done in the township. They think that's funny, Jamie. The fact of the matter is it got done. It didn't get done under any of the other administrations. Okay? Yeah.
I wasn't laughing at these things.
Yeah, I know. Sure you weren't. But I still do have a question. Did the police department get turned down for $50,000 computer upgrade?
Not that I know of. Did they?
What are you talking about?
Again, another thing on West Vincent Voices.
Same thing, and it started with, I had heard, or
I had heard. Okay, I'm so sorry. I had heard, but people do take that as gospel. So, just wondering. So, for clarification,
I got a question.
go ahead.
What was that about?
It's something that was on West Vincent Voices. It says, I recently heard that the police department asked for $50,000 to upgrade the computers and were turned down.
They did, and we said no. They have to take the $75,000 that we saved on open space. They get nothing.
Okay, so, I'm just trying to clear up some of these things, that's all. You know what, there's a ton more, but I don't want to hold it up. The meeting's gone on long enough.
Yes, it has.
Thank you for everything. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Just a quick question to Eric. Janie Lane, the crew was from the state, PennDOT was out there to take a look at it, make an assessment.
Yes.
And the guy said he has to get back to the supervisor to see what they're going to do about it. Meanwhile, the water is flowing across there, it's going to be continuing to flow across there all winter, and it's going to freeze, and it's going to be a big, big mess unless they get that pipe restored underneath the road to start with. Then we work with them for the rest of it.
Right, got it, thank you.
They've got to try to...
I still don't understand. Have we looked at that and tried to clear it, or haven't we tried to clear it? That pipe underneath Bertrand. The pipe underneath Bertrand.
The state went out to fill one section. The road crew did go out to go flush some pipes, yes.
Were they able to flush that one?
No.
Okay. Can we
Yeah.
hire somebody that knows how to, or can do it? I mean, it might take a special
Apparently, the
equipment,
problem
right?
is the pipe, there's no pipe under the road. It's old construction, probably dates back a couple hundred years. When we take it over
So it
top.
doesn't exist in
So
Russell
it doesn't
Down?
really exist anymore, there's not really a pipe under there to clear out.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank you guys for saving the township $75,000 in I think I brought this up before, and I don't remember how it was answered, and actually I don't even remember that I did bring it up before. We used to get the minutes emailed to us, and I just wonder why that stopped.
And the agenda.
Because
agenda.
I don't care as much about the agenda, but the minutes I found really helpful.
Email or put on the website?
No, if you're
Email.
signed up.
It's
you
on the
used to get it.
website, but
Oh, yeah,
I-
everything.
You get the notice of the agenda, then you used to get the minutes too.
We used to
Yeah.
have.
We used to get them.
Yeah, we used to, just to address that, a master list for all that information. Through the transition that we've had here administratively, it wasn't the most efficient process. So we're looking at getting that squared away, and Kathy and I are working on that.
Okay.
I do think it's a nice thing to put out and provide, but to maintain all the integrity of the information and do that properly, I just found some issues with it that I want to correct, so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And is there a requirement that when someone speaks, you list their name and their home residence?
It is very helpful.
I mean, in the minutes, is there a requirement that you do that?
In the minutes, it is to state the resident, yes.
I think he's asking if it's a requirement, state requirement, is that what you're talking about?
Well, state,
Government?
township government.
Right. Is it an actual?
It's just good process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Be interested to see what home address is listed for Barry.
I would have thought.
I thought he lived here in the back corner.
So does he.
Any other comments from non-agenda items?
I'm just a second-class citizen back here.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Second motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, folks. I know it was a long meeting. Bob Water. You don't have a beer in your hand this time.
Oh, don't talk like that.
We don't want to, we don't want to be.
Right now, they don't sell it.
Because anybody could say,
Yeah, I'm interested. Well, it's a free appraisal check.
That's Mickelson people, so, okay.
It was just taken over.
somebody does, there's a hurricane.
They don't have any problem. I don't think we've had many that we've done. I'm
I do too. I know, yeah, that's.